Why Nation Fail by Acemoglu and Robinson. Chapter 6 Drifting Apart. The authors explain how institutions evolve over time, often slowly drifting apart. The authors continue with how Venice became a museum. Venice's rise as a museum, an overview. Economic and political growth. Venice, located north of the Adriatic Sea, was the richest place in the Middle Ages. It gained independence in AD 810, during a time of economic recovery and trade expansion. The city's position as a nation of seafarers allowed it to capitalize on the East's trade routes. By 1050, Venice had a population of 45,000 people, which increased by over 50% to 70,000 by 1200. Economic innovations. The commenda, a rudimentary joint stock company, was a key base for Venice's economic expansion. Profits based on two types of commenda contracts. Political system changes. The Doge, who governed Venice, was selected for life by the General Assembly. After 1032, the Doge was elected along with a new ducal council to ensure the Doge did not acquire absolute power. Political changes post-murder of the Doge. The Great Council was created, the ultimate source of political power in Venice. A new Doge had to swear an oath of office that circumscribed ducal power. Venetian institutional innovations and economic decline. Political reforms led to institutional innovations in law, including independent magistrates, courts, and private contract and bankruptcy laws. Rapid financial innovation, including the beginnings of modern banking, occurred. The Great Council's membership was determined each year, with nominations automatically selected. The Venetian state began to take over and nationalize trade in 1314, monopolizing the main lines of business. Historical development of institutions in different world regions. Today, Venice's economy is primarily tourism, with tourists visiting pre-Serrata wonders like Doge's Palace and St. Mark's Cathedral Lions. Inclusive institutions can be reversed, indicating that there is no simple cumulative process of institutional improvement. Early institutional innovations in Rome. Rome underwent major early institutional innovations, based on inclusive institutions, which became more extractive over time. Western Europe's subsequent institutional development was a consequence of critical junctures following the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Roman Republic and tensions, Tiberius Gracchus's death and rise. Tiberius Gracchus, a plebeian tribune, was assassinated in 133 BC by Roman senators, a response to tensions in the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic was established by Roman citizens overthrowing their king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, around 510 BC. The Republic had inclusive political institutions with checks and balances, but had a large number of slaves who had no rights or political representation. The rise of the plebeians. The plebeians had their own assembly, which could elect the plebeian tribune, who had the power to veto actions by magistrates, call the plebeian assembly, and propose legislation. The power of the plebeians was forged by secession, a form of strike by plebeians who would withdraw to a hill outside the city and refuse to cooperate with the magistrates until their complaints were dealt with. Economic growth and shipwrecks. Archaeologists traced shipwrecks found on the Mediterranean floor as they carried amphorae full of wine or olive oil. Radiocarbon dating can be used to date the ship's wood by comparing the remaining carbon-14 fraction in it to that expected from atmospheric carbon-14. The Greenland Ice Core Project and economic growth. The Greenland Ice Core Project drilled down through 3,030 meters of ice covering about 250,000 years of human history in 1990 to 1992. The project found a distinct increase in atmospheric pollutants starting around 500 BC, reaching a peak in the 1st century AD. Roman growth and inequality. Roman growth was unsustainable due to partial inclusive and extractive institutions, with slavery and the elite dominating the economy and politics. Wealth was captured by wealthy families of senatorial rank, leading to increased inequality between rich and poor. Tiberius Gracchus's land reform. Tiberius Gracchus proposed land reform in 133 BC, redistributing land beyond the legal limit of 300 acres to landless Roman citizens. The Senate blocked implementation of his reforms, but the mob supported him to remove another tribune who threatened to veto his reform. Roman Republic's decline and transition to the Roman Empire. Tensions between senatorial interests and the Senate led to the social war between 91 BC and 87 BC. Julius Caesar's overthrow of the political institutions resulted in Rome falling to Caesar and a civil war. Augustus Caesar, known as the Principate, ruled Rome alone for the next 45 years, creating the Roman Empire. Roman Empire, Flavius Aetius and the decline and fall. Flavius Aetius, the last of the Romans. Flavius Aetius, a general from AD 433 to 454, was the most powerful figure in the Roman Empire. Aetius shaped domestic and foreign policy and fought in civil wars against barbarians and other Romans. His career reflected the changes from the Roman Republic and early empire to the late Roman Empire. Barbarians and the late Roman Empire. By the late Roman Empire, barbarians dominated many parts of the empire. Aetius was held hostage by barbarians, first by the Goths under Alaric and then by the Huns. Roman elites tried to appease barbarian commanders to gain the upper hand in internal power struggles. Decline of Rome. Rome's increasingly extractive political and economic institutions led to its demise due to infighting and civil war. The origins of the decline go back to Augustus's seizure of power, which set in motion changes that made political institutions more extractive. Civil wars became a regular occurrence, even before the chaotic 5th century when the barbarians ruled supreme. Rising instability and economic changes in the Roman Empire. Rising political instability led to changes in societal layout and location of towns and cities. Economic institutions moved towards greater extraction, with citizens becoming nearly all inhabitants by AD 212. Slavery remained a constant throughout Rome, with controversies over whether the fraction of slaves in the population declined over the centuries. The decline of Rome was reflected in the decline of Mediterranean trade and deposits of lead, silver, and copper in the Greenland ice cores. Fear of political consequences and technological innovation in the empire. Emperor Vespasian rejected a man's invention of a device for transporting columns to the capital, fearing political destabilization. Innovation in Rome came from new people with new ideas, not from slaves or semi-servile colony. Nobody writes from Vindolanda overview. Roman conquest of England. Claudius conquered England by AD 43, excluding Scotland. Governor Agricola built forts to protect England's northern border, including Vindolanda. Vindolanda was later incorporated into Hadrian's defensive wall. Candidus and Octavius letter. Candidus and Octavius exchanged letters, revealing advanced monetary economy, financial services, and fiscal system. Economic prosperity in Roman England. Mass manufacture of high-quality pottery, urban centers, and house construction techniques. Economic collapse and industrial revolution. England experienced economic collapse after AD 411, becoming a poor backwater. Inclusion and the Industrial Revolution. England was the first truly inclusive society and the starting point of the Industrial Revolution. Driving paths. Vindolanda and the Roman conquest of England. Claudius conquered England in AD 43, excluding Scotland. Governor Agricola built forts to protect England's northern border, including Vindolanda. Vindolanda was later incorporated into Hadrian's defensive wall. Candidus and Octavius exchanged letters, revealing advanced monetary economy, financial services, and a fiscal system. Economic prosperity in Roman England was marked by mass manufacture of high-quality pottery, urban centers, and house construction techniques. Economic collapse and the Industrial Revolution followed, with England becoming a poor backwater. England borrowed from the Middle East and Europe until the Roman period. England was the first truly inclusive society and the starting point of the Industrial Revolution. Institutional drift in the Americas led to sedentary life, hierarchy, and inequality. Early forms of extractive growth occurred in Mexico, Andean Peru, and Bolivia, resulting in the American Neolithic Revolution. European colonialism created a reversal of fortune, making previously wealthy places relatively poor. Consequences of early growth and inclusive institutions. Early growth and institutional innovations. Neolithic and British industrial revolutions spurred economic growth due to institutional innovations. The decline of the Roman Empire was inevitable as inclusive republican institutions gave way to more extractive ones. Venice's economic prosperity. Economic prosperity of Venice was forged by inclusive institutions, but undermined when the elite closed the system. Historical factors and inclusive institutions. Rome's economic and institutional landscape led to inclusive institutions in England and the British Industrial Revolution. History plays a major role through institutional drift, creating institutional differences. Impact of Rome on Europe. Roman law and institutions influenced the laws and institutions of the barbarian kingdoms post-collapse. Rome's fall created a decentralized political landscape, leading to the Black Death. Europe's institutional distinctness. By the 16th century, Europe was institutionally distinct from sub-Saharan Africa and the Americas. Europe developed representative institutions critical in the development of inclusive institutions. Thank you.